Welcome, everybody, folks from different parts of the world. Thank you for coming to this section. So today we are very pleased to kick off the first program of the online gathering curated by solo-based performance artist Melati. And I will give you a little bit idea about what ADAM is and what this online program is aiming for. So ADAM is shortened for Asia Discovers Asia Meeting for Contemporary Performance. And this is an initiative by me and in collaboration with the Taipei Performing Arts Center located in Taiwan, which is a new theater complex that will open next year. ADAM is actually an artist-centric platform dedicated to fostering interdisciplinary as well as inter or cross-cultural exchange between artists, curators, and other professionals and practitioners. And every year, originally, we have Artist Lab program, gathering artists from different parts of the world and different backgrounds and practice to have collective residency, inventing new ideas for the future. And also we got every year have gathering program welcoming local audiences and international visitors and professionals in Taipei to learn from peers. And this platform is certainly also serving as a network place. However, since last year, ADAM's program has been transforming onto online formats. So last year, we got an online performance project called an Internet of Things. And this year, I have been decided to disseminate the online program into a year-long run section curated by different artists. So the first section is here in April. And because, during these precarious and pandemic situation circumstances, the artist's body and the notion of time, duration, and performativities have become driven in moving image or in digital settings or in our daily everyday life under all the impact of the COVID-19. So I thought Melati would be a very good exemplary artist to provide us thought-provoking programs of lecture, conversation, and workshop to also at the same time provoking what we are now and what time it is through different guest artists. So I'm gonna pass microphone to Melati. Let's welcome Melati and today's artist, Diane.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are. I'm very honored to be part of this program by ADAM, Asia Discovers Asia Meeting of Performing Arts. This is the 5th edition, right, River? And I'm very glad that I wish I could go to Taipei for this program. But of course, this is the best solution, which I think also it has a good and positive side of being here virtually, and we can reach people from there wherever they are. And during this pandemic, of course, we are all on the same page. Artists in general are facing a situation that globally impacted by the COVID-19. And there have been uncertainty of plans and schedule, restricted mobilities, delayed rhythm of productivity, and so on. Nevertheless, in our creative genre, we seek for many possibilities to adjust with and overcome this condition by keeping our pace and senses in our lives. However, digital communications like this make us possible to meet and connect in many ways, as for example, what we are doing now in our virtual space. I would like to welcome you all to our first day of series of talks this week, which is entitled Back to Rituals, Curation, Bodies, and Performativity. Of course, as an artist whose practice is using the body as the main medium, who has been dealing with this ritual as part of the subject, I was intrigued to have this precious time to open up a series of conversations and sharing moments and further discussions on how the ritual encompass our art practice today. If rituals considered as a set of actions and activities involving gestures, language, and objects that happen in a specific space and engage with the influence of spirituality, how do we get inspired by them in our contemplative life? What means can we connect rituals with the history of our culture and our social environment now? I am hoping we will be able to broaden our perspective in seeing and relating our spirit of creation through this entangled sharing series by listening and making dialogues with all the guests I am inviting, who are friends and colleagues in performance art practice. They are Dr. Diane Butler, Natasha Tonte, Korakrit Arunano Chai from Bangkok, and Max Stewart from Berlin. Today we have Diane Butler. I always call her Bu because in Indonesia in English maybe it is translated as Madam Diane Butler. So Bu Diane, I cannot call you Diane just like that. So I will always mention Bu Diane to speak about religious ritual in Bali as a way of living arts. I have been knowing her since over 20 years through my father, and they have been working very close to each other. My late father was teaching Amarta movement. Maybe some of you already know with this. He's a movement artist, and his practice also very much related with the rituals idea. Diane Butler is a dance movement artist, teacher, and cultural program director who has collaborated with traditional and contemporary artists from varied cultures and faiths in the Americas, Europe, and Asia for 35 years since 2001 has resided in the villages of Bedulu and Tejakula, Bali, Indonesia. In 2001, together with Suprapto Soyodamo, she co-founded Dharma Nature Time, a cooperative international foundation with members in 8 nations that carry out activities to support interculture in cultural environments through sharing in the arts, religiosity, and nature. In 2009, Dharma Nature Time was granted roster consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN. Diane is also an alumna of the 2011 UNITAR session on the management and conservation of the World Heritage Sites held in Japan. She earned a BFA in dance from the Juilliard School, MOS in dance and culture from Wesleyan University, is the first foreign scholar to earn the PhD in Kajian Budaya from Universitas Udayana in Bali. And in 2014, was appointed as a volunteer associate professor in that program. In this session, Diane would like you all to open your video, as there will be some part of the sharing which includes some physical experience. It is also okay from where you sit down. We will have a presentation and sharing from Diane Butler for around 45 minutes or to an hour. And then we will follow with a conversation between me and her. And then I will open up a Q&A for you all to join if you have any questions. If you have any questions, please click the raise hand on your Zoom, and then I will try to deliver the questions directly, or you write on the chat. So I would like to welcome Diane Butler. The time is yours.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Melati, River, all the friends at TPAC also, and all friends who joined today. It's my pleasure to join you. And please pardon me if sometimes my brain goes left and right about which language I should be speaking, because I rarely speak English with Melati, and also where I stay, I never speak English. So I thought I would start a little bit today with the idea of Asia discovering Asia meeting, because somehow it's quite interesting to me that Melati invited me to join this first session, especially because I'm not Asian. And majority of the people on this Zoom meeting today are Asian people. So I would like to just start from that position of being a non-Asian person in Asia, joining a meeting of Asia, discovering Asia. And then I would like to add to that a little bit about the idea of back to ritual. Because usually when someone asks me to speak, it's such a challenge. Because my main language is movement. It's not the oral language. I didn't start speaking so much until maybe I was about 28 or 29, mainly because of teaching. But still, even then, it was a strange thing to me to try to express myself verbally. So when I saw the title of Back to Ritual, of course, the first thing I thought was the back. And how in the culture of bowing that we find all over the world, the back is the primary way that human beings can, you could say, touch the inside of their being, but also acknowledge that there's something greater than us. It's the back, actually. It's the back, the spine. It's interesting as a dancer to think about all the different kinds of bows that happen or reverences that happen. Because almost all of the techniques that I trained in, and most of them were more classical, you could say. Juilliard was, classical ballet and classical modern dance. Later, I worked in more experimental work. But all of them started with some idea of neutral, of coming in touch with the back. So I thought, why not just mention that before I start this sharing today? I'm happy to see so many people joined, and including a good friend who was part of Dharma Nature Time, and Wiser, who's there on the West Coast very early in the morning. But I think most people are in Asia time right now, except for Isabel. Are you in Asia time or are you in European time?
Yes, I'm in the Netherlands.
Okay, in European time. Is there anybody else who's in European time right now? It's okay to open your mic and say, yes, I'm in European time.
Yes.
Yes.
Susan?
Yeah.
She went. Okay. Anybody else in, is anybody in Australian time? Silent.
UK time here, sorry.
Yes, anybody in Australian time? Anybody in Australian time? Oh, quiet. Okay. How many people are in Southeast Asian time? I am. Malati is. Okay. And then Asian time. Who's in Asia time? Please say something. You can open the mic and say, yes, I'm in Asian time.
Doi, Asian time.
Okay.
Yes, in Asian time.
Okay. So first, let me say that for me to share about religious ritual in Bali, that I should be honest that I'm not a Baliologist. I'm also not an Indonologist. I'm a dance movement artist who learned how to speak and who learned how to write and who ended up doing a PhD because Malati's father really pushed me to try. And I wrote about religiosity and art, inspired by 2 villages in Bali that I've lived in for the past 20 years. So when I look at the question of religious ritual in Bali and how that relates to everyday life, I look at that from the perspective of Bali in the view of Indonesia in dialogue with the world. Because a lot of the work that Malati's father and I did together was about that, was about intercultural and interreligious dialogue through sharing in the arts, religiosity, and nature. In fact, the name of Dharma Nature Time itself was something that came up after much discussion about the idea of there being different kinds of time in the world and how that those differences, that diversity of the different kinds of time could eventually become a huge challenge for a sense of healthiness or well-being on this earth, but also how that relates to art practice. So I think most of us as artists, of course, know that there's so many different kinds of perspective. And in fact, usually often we try to explain ourselves like, excuse me, I just need to lay on the floor for 30 minutes and do nothing. It looks like I'm doing nothing, but I'm actually working. Or I'm sweeping and I'm actually doing something. But the productive, urban, modern time wouldn't count that as being productive time or creative time. This was something that I learned about early on, maybe when I was about 19 at the Juilliard School, and I would go to the lobby, and in the early mornings, I would lay on the floor by myself before going to class, because I felt I needed to be in touch with the time of my body, the rhythm of my body. And then I could go in, and as Susan, who danced Graham technique knows, then I could go into the studio and do that thing. I would be ready for it. But I had to prepare myself first in my own time, according to the time of my body. And that wasn't according to the time of the clock. Then later in life, I started realizing when I was working in site-specific dances with Ruby Shang, who was a former teacher of mine, that there was a kind of a time of the nature. Often we would work in outdoor sites, in historic sites, sites that had a lot of memory. So even if I was not there at the Eiffel Tower when it was built or commemorated, when we made the commemoration of the Eiffel Tower, something in my being could feel a kind of a duration of time and space in that big plaza. Or if I wasn't there at the beginning of the American Dance Festival, something in my being could feel how dancers had danced and danced and danced. And that led to that anniversary of the American Dance Festival. But there was something else that I learned during that time of working with Ruby, who is Asian, half Chinese, half Japanese, American, which was that there was a way that especially dancers could have a dialogue with each other without speaking and could make decisions together creatively in process, in time. There was a kind of common field that could happen through the creative process that was beyond this oral question of identity or culture, you could say. But also, I felt there was a kind of fuzziness happening between East and West, because there it was. I was a Western person. I took Buddhist vows when I was 25. And then I went to Asia with Asian people, Chinese, Japanese, American, Japanese, and Korean. A lot of the people we met couldn't speak English. So we had to be able to figure out how to create anyway. And in fact, I felt we created better and made better decisions than people who tried to make a decisions through some kind of mental process and oral process. But that's another story. When I came to Indonesia, I felt that even more, because I realized that Indonesia itself in 1997 was a place where you could say tradition and modernity had a kind of coexisting and a kind of possibility, and also with other cultures. That was my 10-minute marker of my intro. Thank you. I felt that very strongly. I felt there was something about the sites, especially the open air sites. And that was important to me because I felt, especially as a Western person, that there was a huge polemic between this question about believing and not believing in the West. But I myself was a person who, yeah, you could say I have a strong sense of religiosity. I loved doing the 108,000 vows in my Buddhist practice. I loved it. I would do it again. I didn't come to Bali until later, actually. It was in 2000 when I brought students to come and study. And in that time, Melati's father, Suprakto Siri Dharma, told me about two villages. One is Bedulu, where I am now, which is in the center of Bali. And it's a place where there was a meeting 1,000 years ago that created Bali Hinduism from 9 different faith groups. You could say a kind of unity and diversity religious path that also has a lot of movement. It's decentralized because in Bali, the family itself prays all over the household. The village itself prays in many different places. And then the people also move throughout the island. So it's a moving ritual process. It's not a sedentary or stagnant religious process at all. And it moves with the movement of the sunlight. It moves with the movement of the moon. It moves with the movement of water. It moves with the movement of the wind. And it moves with the movement of the intangible or the ineffable or the ethereal, which for Balinese is the wind. And that's for them also where the ancestor resides, because they say that when the body dissolves, the last thing left is the wind, which is now a big deal in the world, as we know. The air, our breathing. The other village where I also work often and lived for 10 years, and many friends of Prapto and also Melati has done work, is in Tejukula in the North Bali, where different cultures met and were able to create a temple together with their various shrines all in one area. So it's a kind of interesting phenomena, this sense of interreligious and interculturality through practice, and also architecturally speaking, not just intellectually, or you could say textually speaking. So next thing I would like to do, if that's possible, is start the timing for the next 10 minutes. But first I'm going to do something because I'm not Balinese. And I would like to say thank you to all of the Balinese and all of the Indonesians who have shared so much, not just with me, but also with many friends who have come to visit here, including this dog that's eating my cloth right now. So I'm going to light a stick of incense. And then I'm going to show you the most basic thing in Bali. Maybe I'll just show you on this camera, not the moving camera yet, which is the banten, the chanang. This is the first body. It's a microcosmic body of the body of the universe. But also this body, our body, this human body, in the seeing of the Bali Hindu faith, is also a microcosm. So everything inside this body is the same, that's everything inside this. And then later you add the holy water. And it's also the same thing that's inside the compound. So this body has, you could say for traditional cultures in general, I feel confident saying that because I have a PhD and I'm 60 years old, is for, you could say, customary or traditional peoples. This body itself is not separate from these other aspects of the world. It's not that humans are above. Humans are part of. It's not an easy thing to see because for me, whatever, I grew up in a human culture, not in a human nature culture, and not in a human nature God culture, which is often the way that Indonesians will express it. They'll say, manusia alam Tuhan, like it's one whole word. This is Nero, who's enjoying. So before we begin our walk through the household, what I'd like, if it's possible, if everybody could please turn on the camera for a second. And I'd like you, wherever you are, to try to make a gesture where you think sunrise is, where you are. So right now, my gesture is to the sunrise right now. And I'd like to see where yours are, or if you can feel where yours are. Because some people in the city might not be able to feel it, where the sunrise is. It doesn't have to be a pretty gesture. You can make a face at it if you want to. Thank you. I'm just going to flip through here a little bit so I can see the gallery. Oh. And then I'm going to turn off the dog. Okay. Other cameras on? No Asian cameras on. Ha, not very many. Okay, that's good. And then do you know also where is the highest water? The highest water that's nearest where you reside. In this house, I have two. I have highest water there, but there's the highest water on the island is over there. But the highest water for this region is over there. Okay, okay, thank you. So I need a moment to shift to this because my other phone went off for a moment. Join meeting. Where is it? There it is. Paste. Got it. Join it. Oopsie. Turn that back on. Sorry for a moment here. River, can you turn on your mic for a moment?
Yes.
I'd like to know why your parents called you River.
I literally named myself as River.
Okay, okay. That's good. And are you located currently right now? Are you in the city or are you in the,
Yeah,
are you in France or are you in?
I'm currently in Taipei. It's a city.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And Melati, you're currently in Plusangan, in Java. Is that right?
I'm inside my studio, and background is my studio, part of my studio too. I'm in Solo, in Plusangan.
Okay.
And there is the red rice.
Yes. So I'm going to shift my earpiece here to this. Okay. A few years ago, I started becoming very interested in, hold on, I'm not muted, that's good, in architecture. And then I also had the great fortune of a professor at the university here asking me to help her to translate encyclopedia of traditional Balinese architecture that she's been working on for years and years and years. And I told her that we should make a workshop so that people could move it. So I'm going to take you for a little walk, if it's okay. But first, I'm going to mute that one. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Hello?
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
all's good.
All right. And then I'm going to try to flip. Hi, there's me. Okay. Are we starting my 10 minutes again now? Yes? Okay. So this actually is something that's not just about Bali, but you could say Nusantara architecture in general. And it has a lot to do with ritual life. Maybe you'll get to meet the family. And it has to do with the earth and where human beings reside and how they create a settlement. So this is the family shrine. Swastiastu. We're taking a small walk. There are many, many people from Taipei, but there's also Melati. I'm going to flip my phone around so I can see what you see. And then I'm going to shift this, I think. I'm not very good at that. Here we go.
So this shrine faces towards the Saki, which is the highest mountain, and it's the main water source of all of Bali. But Batur and also the mountain that's near the big rice fields is pretty important. So this faces towards sunrise and mountainward. But in North Bali, it's the opposite direction. So here it's on the right side. My right hand is on the right side. But in North Bali, it's the opposite way because we're on the other side of the flow of the water. And these shrines actually are bodies also. And this is the main ritual life of Bali is really sourced, especially from this one, which has 3 little rooms. They're actually called rong or ruang spaces. They're not open right now, but usually inside of them, they would place many, many different ornate offerings that are made from all the different elements of nature that are in this area especially. Although nowadays there's a question of import, especially leaves from certain kinds of trees. This is a space that has 3 spaces. So one would be for Brahma, which means creation, Vishnu, which is for preservation, and Shiva, which is about the life and death cycle. And the idea of having those 3 spaces actually came from this village, from a great meeting that was held 1,000 years ago, where the whole idea of spatial layout and how is the body of Bali, the body of the house, and the body of the human being This family was the chief of the village, and before that, their great-grandfather was a man that Walter Spies met, which made Bali known throughout the world. And this is everyday life of ritual. Now we're just cleaning up after Galonan. Cloth. I'm going to keep moving. I've lived with this family now for on and off for 20 years, but especially during the pandemic, every day. So this land is high, and now we're going to start to move down. I'm going to move a little more quickly. It's terraced. And beauty here is for God and the ancestors. It's not for human beings, which for me was a great relief. As somebody who went to Juilliard and had a lot of training about beauty in a certain kind of way. We're lucky it's the magic hour. Nice to go for a walk with you. I hope you can come and visit someday. It's open air. The matriarch. Our offspring. Patriarch. I never really studied Balinese dance very much, a little bit with my students, because I wanted to feel what the posture was like. And it was so intense for me, because it's very, has a lot of tension in the body, a kind of, I don't know how to say that in English, a kind of quivering the muscles. It's based on animal movement, but also from the shadow puppet. So now we're down below, and this shrine faces due east, directly to the sun rise. Nothing here is lined up, even though you can see a lot of straight lines, which is also a beautiful idea in terms of composition. I think it helps a lot about the idea of orientation, not just the time or the duration, but the place and the space. Going down again. I'm out on the street now. These are the early morning offering. That's the direction of the Samuntiga temple. It's due east. And this is a split gate. You can find this kind of split gate also a lot in Java. Because Java and Bali, they say we're like the sun and the moon. But it's also a little bit like an ancestor. It has a body. It has shoulders and a head, a trunk. And feet. The pillars do too. And pillars here even have names. There's main ones that are like, you could say like the patriarch and the matriarch. But they also have feet, trunk, shoulders, and a head. Like our body. The intellectual people on this Zoom would say, oh, anthropomorphic. But I actually think that the way of seeing here is not anthropomorphic. I think it's the other way around. I think it's nature first, and then from that came creation, more giving reverence to the shape of the nature, like the mountain has a foot, the mountain has a belly, and the mountain has a head. And all human beings also have like that. I'm just going to go a little further. So I'm talking about all these things because the way the household is shaped in Bali, and this one is very classical, is really the main basis of all of the ritual practice of Bali. The how they pray, the where they pray, and the when. But for them, it's really not praying so much, you could say, but more as the idea of offering. And it's not an exotic thing. It's actually a great burden, to tell you the truth. Sometimes as a Buddhist, I just think, oh, why don't they just change to Buddhism? It'd be a lot easier. You just do those 108,000 vows and you're done. This is a very classical structure. It took them many, many years of this family being able to build this. And for people who have gender questions, this one is more, you could say, the male. And this structure through over here is more the female. But don't worry. There are many dances here where men and women play both roles. So it's not what you think it is. Is that my 10 minutes? I did it. I'm so proud of myself. Okay. I'm on my way back to the laptop now. I'm so glad I could take a walk with you. I can feel that even if you went to sleep. I hope someday you can come visit here. We can practice measuring in the body. Now you know where I'm sitting. This is a long ballet. It's more like a communal space. Okay. Nice to see you all again. So I'm going to take a breath and shift to the next section. But first, if I can, I want to unplug this and plug back into here. It's a funny idea. I don't know what to do about the dog. It's just become... Okay, this one's off. Hold on. This is unmuted. Transition. This is like that would be like if you were in the theater, it'd be like off stage. Don't touch the curtain. On stage. Plug in the headset again. Turn this one off because you don't need that sound. Mute that. Okay, good. Stop that video. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to the last part of the lesson, but beforehand, can I show you the Balinese calendar for a moment first? Is that okay? What it looks like? It has to do with duration, yeah. It looks kind of like this, you know. It's got all these different. I could probably use the hand phone a little better, but. Because duration here has, there's like 3 or 4 different systems that are going on at the same time. And I also appreciate that because it makes me feel like I don't have to always be in this linear progressive time, this time that's just moving forward, forward, forward until the end, and then you're dead and that's it. But there's something that is much more, you could say, a kind of organism time. It's not always about this clock time, which sometimes can drive, especially Euro-American or Australian people, crazy to feel the different quality about what is on time or with time or in time in different parts of the world. So I'd like to share with you 2 videos, and I chose them intentionally because I feel like both look at this question about Bali in the context of other cultures of Indonesia and the world. And also it looks at Bali ritual, religious ritual of Bali, not just in the daily life of the home stage, which is a stage, or the human body stage, which is a stage, but also you could say the ritual art stage. And I do know that there's many polemics and there's been much discussion about tourism and the airport dances and all these kinds of things. And I've read some of those articles and some of them I haven't because it's not really my realm of work, but, and I also never thought that much about tourism until I came to Bali, to tell you the truth. But now I know, when I was dancing in New York, yeah, New York City was making money off of me, weren't they? People were eating out dinner, they were like spending time in New York City to come to the Joyce Theater or BAM or whatever, you know, it's like, oh, I contributed to the economics of New York City. That's good, even though it didn't pay me. So I chose these 2 videos because I feel that the quality of the videos were
were pretty good. And also, the first one is an excerpt of an excerpt. And it opens with the prayer of the main priest of Bali Hinduism, who passed away a few years ago, and he was a good friend of Prapto and I. His name was Padanda Arimbawa. And he was a kind of Bali Hindu priest who would come wherever, whenever. So Prapto often invited him to come and pray if we made a program. And he never had a question about praying with artists. He absolutely had no problem with it. But this one was an interesting one because it was the first time he was really on a stage, on a proscenium stage in Melbourne. So this video is a perspective, you could say, of Asia. It's filmed by an Australian. It's how Southeast Asians, the Bali Hindu priest, high priest, the princess from the Palace of Solo, Gusti Watia, dancer from Makassar, Lina, Prapto, and myself, and the World Peace Barong, which was something that was created in Bali. How that classical sense of praying and moving could be on the proscenium stage, but not be an entertaining. And before we started, I remember the priest asked me, because he knew that I had really classical dance and stage background. He didn't ask Prapto. So I said to him, well, you know, this building, it's a new building, the convention center, maybe it's good if Padanda can pray so that it can be safe and that people can have good sharing and good dialogue, because it was the Parliament of the World Religions in front of 7,000 people. And the dance we did was called Trioni Saraswati. So it was looking at the source of women, or female, you could say, for giving peace to the world. So we're just going to watch a little bit of that one. My tech friends, it's about a 7-minute video. I'm going to turn off my mic now.
International Balinese Performance Group, Sesaji Triyoni Sarawasti. Here from Bali, that was Sesaji Triyoni Saraswati.
Okay. Thank you. And then I would just like to share a very brief video. It's only 2 minutes. And then after that, we can move into the Q&A chat. Actually, in that last video, it was a collaboration of, please wait, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Thank you. The last video was a collaboration of Bali, Solo, Central Java, and Makassar. So it was a collaboration of, you could say, mountain ocean culture, water, and also ocean culture. And it was very interesting to work together like that because all of them are master dancers. And the dancer from Bali, Ibu Arini, also is, I think she must be in her 80s now. But it was a relief for them to be able to do a ritual sense of art making in a, you could say, a contemporary proscenium stage. It was a relief for them. The second video I want to show is a different perspective, which is a video made by a Javanese filmmaker of me moving, making a movement offering with no sound. There was actually background sound, but I don't know why he cut it out. And I'm moving in the context of a Bali Hindu temple that was discovered, unearthed, underneath the foundation of the newly built library at the Islamic State University just north of Yogyakarta, UII in Sleman. Diane, can you take this and offer it somewhere, please? Yeah. Please take this and offer it wherever.
Ini Ibu baju di mana?
Makasih, amasi. Terima kasih.
Di mana?
Di mana saja.
Oh, Ibu beli tadi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I always give offerings where I stay here because that's the main language here. So this piece was an interesting experience to move in the grounds of a Hindu chandi, a Hindu temple that was unearthed in 2009, that maybe was from around the 14th century, that was found in the ground underneath an Islamic State University in Java. And maybe someday you can come and visit there also. So Prapto and Suprapto Suyadharmo and many colleagues together from different parts of Indonesia and also from abroad helped to make digging the library chandi. And I offered 21 moments of stillness. And I'm going to show this because I feel that as I know that many of the people on this Zoom are more performance artists and more experimental movement people. But, you know, as someone who's classically trained, I saw much work all over the world, you know, from the most experimental to the most classical, and I love it all. I could watch it all. Whenever, wherever, I'll go see something because I want to see what people are doing. But for myself, of course, I had to recognize that my back, going back to the original topic, my back ritual has a very classical movement background. And I shouldn't be shy of that because that's how I was trained since I was 5 and now I'm 60. So instead of throwing it away, I decided that it's okay. I can cook it and move it according to the place and the time and the conditions of this body in different sites, anywhere. So that's why I decided to show this next video. And it's called 21 Moments of Stillness. It's just an excerpt of it. Thank you. You can roll it. Thank you very much. So I hope it can be inspiring in whatever ways, even if something small. And I'm happy to chat with Malati and River and anybody who would like to chat. I can't read all those chat messages in the inbox though. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. Actually, this is the first time that we contextually having a dialogue, with Diane and I, although we have been knowing privately very close since she is the partner of my father for a long, long time, and that she has been living in Indonesia for over 20 years. Yes, I thought like I've been following practice of my father and her practice and how they work together. And I've been following the ideas behind that practice and that they were very engaged, so much engaged with the idea of ritual, and where I personally sometimes like having a feeling of avoiding or rejecting the form of the ritual practice in the art. But actually later when I get older,
incredible how getting older can change things. Yeah.
And I thought like, well, actually my practice is not far from that too, you know, although we have a different way to express it or to take it into forms of performance. But I do agree with my father, idea of how to see, for example, the ancient ideas also, like learning the spirit of ritual, the practice of ritual. And we know that rituals are very much connected with traditions, mostly, but we can also learn that ritual is something that we do also in our daily life, like something that we repeat and we do, and that connect us with our surrounding. So actions that we do, that we personally create, even in relation with our surroundings, objects, or environment, that can place ourselves in our environment, a certain environment and certain time. I'm very touched watching my father's in the documentation again. It makes me miss him so much. He passed away in the end of 2019, just before the COVID came. And also to see the Gusti Murtiya, the princess of Solo Palace, and Ibu Arini, one of the female maestro in dance from Denpasar, and Ibu Nurina from Sulawesi, who is also maestro of Pacarena dance in South Sulawesi. This kind of presentations or performance is very familiar to me. Part of this kind of form that my father has been developed in the 70s, actually. And I also miss Bedulu. Thank you for sharing the architecture of the House of Nuaja. So Pak Nuaja was a prominent Balinese dancer, I would say, like that, to Diane.
Wayan Limbach was.
Limbach and Pak Nuaja. Yes.
Pak Nuaja didn't dance at all, but Wayan Limbach was. That was the man that Walter Spies met in 1930s.
Yeah. Wayan Limbach, Pak Limbach was one of the also like favorite dancer of Sukarno, I think.
It's true.
Former president. So Diane lives there, and I often visited her there or stayed there when I'm in Bali. So they are the family of Nuaja, also like my family. We are very close, and also to mention that Diane is also the younger sister of Judith Butler. Maybe most of you have heard. One of my favorite philosophers.
Should we say that again? Because actually she sent me a WhatsApp. I thought River would like this. She sent me a WhatsApp yesterday. I told her that I was joining this and that Mulati really would like to have a conversation soon, someday.
Yeah.
Like planned. And then I told her about this idea of back to ritual and duration, bodies, and performativity. And you know what she asked me? She said, "Are you going to talk about performativity?" And I answered her, "No, I've never used that word, but someday I hope you will."
Okay, let's have her soon with us online.
I know. But because I also told Mulati, this is important. I'm sorry, I'm talking so fast. That many years ago, she said that someday, this was before I did the PhD, she said someday I would speak and she would move. And I thought, that's such a funny idea. Why was she saying that? Because I was always so quiet. I never used the verbal, and she, of course, did a lot. You know, she's a philosopher. But she loves dancing. And then, you know, she's performed now a few times. I mean, she's done collaborations with dancers, and she said, okay, our time is coming soon.
That would be exciting. I was like really like dreaming to invite you both, you know, like the Butler sisters. And
the Butler sisters.
I I was planning actually to invite you both for the Jakarta Biennale in 2017, but because of the schedule, she could not come. So, but maybe giving an optimistic hope for the next year, when the COVID is gone, and then we probably can rearrange something together. Yes. I would like to open a session with a Q&A and open discussions, and I think it will be more like relaxed. I think it's better than to talk to send a chat, and if you can raise hands, you can probably can open the space for you to ask Diane directly and make
please the Asian people not shy, because my experience of 20 years is Asian people don't ask that many questions, except for people in the performance art world. They do. Right? Yeah.
Sometimes the internet connections also get in trouble if the video is open. But if you don't have an internet problem, I will be very happy also to see you here virtually. And let's make our virtual space of conversation open and be more discursive and let's open the talk and dialogue. Anyone would like to say something or ask something to Diane Butler? Yeah, Suzanne? Please unmute you.
Thank you, Diane. That was beautiful, Diane. Thank you so much. It was just, wow. It brought me back because I have been to Bali several times and just stunning. There's a couple of things that arose for me. One in particular, when you said the microcosmic body, it was making me think a lot. I work with various somatic practices, and I had this intense conversation with Ava Karzak and Glenna Batson and there's a big whole thing going that somatic, it's just not doing it anymore. Because when Thomas Hanna began dealing with or beginning the somatic way of looking at things, it's just our bodies, the human body. Whereas so many somatic practitioners are people who are in that there's no hierarchy, that it is our environment, it is the matter around us, the material around us, we're all one. And I loved when you brought that microcosmic. It's almost like it's been there for years, and finally now we need another word for somatic, or we need to expand the somatic beyond, because so much more is going on. So I want to thank you for that. But what I want to question you is, you said about measuring the body, the measurement. Yes. When I heard that word, I must admit, I'm a little bit like, oh, like this, because the word
it's very important.
Oh yeah, but the word measure for me, and I guess it depends on how you describe it, because I was in this webinar about measuring liveness, which almost wanted to make me sick, that in order to, I see Ann Visner is going, in order to allow institution, corporations, governments to value liveness, they need appropriate measurements. So I'm looking at the word and going like, no. So what are you referring to with measuring the body in this sense?
Actually, what I found just really really touched me about architectural practices in the Nusantara, or you could say the archipelago region, is it's based on the body. It's based on the measurement of the owner of the land, the actual physical measurement. So in the encyclopedia that I helped to translate, which should be published sometime this year, there are hundreds. I mean, I think there's around 7,000 entries that are related to certain kinds of measurements. And they have to do with the measurement of finger, they have to do with measurement from the elbow to the hand, They have to do with the whole, I'd have to move back to do this, like a whole span, like from here to here. They have to do with these measurement like this to this. And they also have to do with the footstep of the owner of the land. And then there's like in Feng Shui also has that kind of principle. But basically it has to do with the different ways that you combine or multiply or reduce measurements that will give the most beneficial human nature, that greater than us relation or well-being. There's measurements that can help to, oh God, I can't say this in English, Malati. Repair things or not just, or prevent things also. Like for example, the front of this house, when I was saying there's no straight lines, even though it looks like a straight line, but the pathway always has to have a slight curve and a slight curve. And this is because a straight line is, that's how you can kill somebody, basically. Something can kill something when there's a point to a point that's a straight line. So that alun, or that small shifting like that happens, especially in Southeast Asian architecture all over Indonesia, is safety, and it's also more healthy. It's more organic measurement with the reality of the nature itself. That's what I mean about measurement. And it also has to do with how we move and where we move, from where to where, and how far. The physical distancing here of a healthy household is different from the kinds of challenges, for example, that slums would experience, or how to work with a small space, but still make it have breathing. They always add an extra measurement. It's called untuk hidup. It helps to give alive. It's a little extra measurement. Always add a little extra. So, when your performance teacher, your singing teacher was always yelling at you and saying, give a little extra, give a little extra, always give a little extra. That is the mantra here of architecture, is always add a little extra measurement.
That is entirely different from the measurement that I was encountering. And so thank you. That's beautiful. It's absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be painful to look at some of the measurements nowadays and how constricting and limiting. And, we can use that in our work, of course, as commentary about the issues of measurement. We can use it a lot. We should use it. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. I have friends in India, and I'm really worried about them. I'm really worried about their measurement there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. So I don't cry on the Zoom.
Thank you. Now Ji-chan. I have met Ji-chan as part of the cinema movement that happened in my studio just before COVID year.
Ya, selamat petang, selamat siang semua. Terima kasih.
Sama-sama.
Hi, nice to see you again, Melati dan Ibu Diane. Yeah, I have a response and then I have a short question. First, my response is that I feel really touched by how you described that you were able to, or you are cooking your classical background and moving it, signaling a kind of transformation, incorporating it into your present life and moment. Because I think, it is a far more gentle, or how do I say, or organic way also of, I suppose, living through what one has experienced in the past, as opposed to trying to remove it or to excise it out of your life because maybe one may not see a value in it anymore. But that kind of value is also a flawed idea, I suppose, because I suppose everything in one's life has a contribution, right? And then my question is regarding the difference between performing in a specific site. I suppose through your examples, right, of Balinese dance in these sacred sites often, and these particular stages with this particular architecture, which is all imbued with a very special meaning, compared to performing outside of these sites. So, for instance, the video that you showed, where there was the performance at this Parliament of Religions, what is your opinion and on the distinction between these two performance modes? Because that's something that I always grapple with in my own work.
Yeah.
Now I'm based in Berlin, and I have been researching a lot also about my own, I suppose, ancestral context and in Singapore. And I find it always a moment of confusion sometimes when I try to practice some of these rituals in a space that is removed from my so-called original context. Yeah.
I understand. Okay. It's okay? G? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, good.
That's my question. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Actually, it's okay. I'd like to talk about the everyday body a little for a moment. Is that okay, Mulati? The everyday body, not the dancerly trained body. Because actually in my own life, I ended up working a lot with people who were not trained in dance. And I was so happy because I could really enjoy the naturalness of the response of you could say, just the instinct of a body. And I've actually done a lot of work over the years recently, over the last maybe 30 years, I would say, ever since I left New York City with you could say non-dancers, with the everyday body. And that was one of the ways that I felt I could connect with this idea of moving beyond the classical training, or this high profile push of Juilliard and the proscenium stage, and I should dance with Paul Taylor Dance Company. But when I auditioned, I always get to the end, the last 3 times, and he would always cut me, and I would always feel relieved, like, I'm so glad I didn't have to do that. That kind of the story, that whole thing of the premiere, and then slowly coming back to the beauty of, and the interesting and the gnarly and the limitations and the opening of the limitations and the choices of the everyday body. That was fascinating to me. And I felt I could do that because a lot of people, especially I'm 60, so a lot of people, in my, around my generation who were working in postmodern Grand Union and so forth in America were really working with ordinary movement. And I was very curious about that also. How could I have a sense of ordinary, even though I knew it would be almost impossible, but at least to have a sense of appreciation and bring it into the work. So I think this also relates to your question about ritual, and ritual in the context of its original context, and what happens when we move it into other spaces. It was a big polemic in Bali, actually, especially with the whole tourism thing starting in the 70s, and that's another story. But, and commodification, all these kinds of things. But you see it a lot in Asia, especially. I should say, honestly, I have a lot of friends in Asia, and it's painful, to watch when certain kinds of religious things are ritual acts, you could say, are taken into a context that doesn't really have anything to do with them, and it's kind of like exoticizing or something like that. And, you know, I mean, contemporary thinkers and contemporary practitioners are just beyond that. It's like, this is over. That was over in the 1980s. But it still happens a lot. And it's painful because it feels very, actually kind of dangerous in a way. It feels dangerous because it feels like it puts something into a light that it doesn't really belong in. On the other hand, there's the other dilemma, which is what happens when a Western person, like me, for example, becomes Buddhist at the age of 25 and does all of the preliminary practices, which are really extensive, does 2-month retreat alone, things like that. And Asian person might look at me like, that's impossible. It would be impossible for them to actually be able to look at me and see, that's a woman who did 2-month retreat alone. I remember a man in Bali once saying to me, only priests would do that here. And I said, well, at one point I did think about becoming something, but I decided it was better I stayed in the art world, that it would be healthier for me and I would be able to contribute something even small. So going back to bring it to the stage, what I felt when we got to the Parliament of World Religions is we were lucky because it was a context of a meeting of 7,000 religious leaders or people who are interested in interfaith dialogue. But on the other hand, it was difficult because it was highly produced. It was really by the clock. There was this whole like very proscenium stage, way backstage, sound check, you know, these kinds of things, the light, the sound, all these things. But what was really interesting to me was feeling how much the master dancers and the high priest, the Padanda priest and his wife could just stay with the fact of what their ritual process is about. They could stay with the fact of it, wherever, whenever. I think it's possible, but I think one of the things that has to happen has to do with your perspective about the space itself. So when Padanda Aribawa, the high priest, sat on that round circle, on that raised platform, that Malati's father actually asked, please lift the priest up a little bit. He shouldn't be direct on the ground. He should be up a little bit. And when he's praying, he was praying in all the multiple dimensions that he prays in, not in the frontal proscenium perspective, even though he was on the proscenium stage. But I think this frontal thing is a big question now, especially with all the visual work and the TikToking and the, you know, I mean, I feel like, no, how many people are willing to do a Zoom and go like this? Not very many, you know, or go like this. I mean, the movers are, but a lot of people are still they're in the box now on the square and very frontal, which is, that's hard work. We've got to keep time and space. That's what I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now I really sound like a teacher. Sorry about that, Malati.
Don't worry. Thank you. I thought it's very interesting to put up this space, the idea of the space and how we replace or displace the space, the actual space into a different kind of form, or even the physical space, of course. But learning from tradition is not very easy. Like, let's say for Chichan, who has been living in Singapore, probably that is more hybrid, and the modern life is quite advanced comparing to the daily life in Indonesia, for example, although we are only 2 hours away by flight. The practice, the daily practice, the daily environment, the daily atmosphere of this kind of a ritual practice in our cultural surrounding is probably quite limited comparing to us. And so,
except for maybe in the private sphere.
Yes.
I think it's a question of the private sphere and the public sphere.
Exactly.
And that's something, yeah, it's something I really felt. I mean, even in the cities in Indonesia, I can still feel more than any other nation. I've worked in 35 countries in the world. Even in the urban settings of Indonesia, I feel like it's still okay to have a sense of your ritual life in the public sphere. I know there's a lot of polemics, of course, you know, but still there's a sense that it doesn't have to be just in the private sphere. But in the cities of other countries, I can feel that it gets more and more closed in, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the idea of transferring or transporting the ancient idea of the ritual practice into our contemporary performance, that cannot be just an idea of you know, like intellectually absorbing the idea, but also like to learn how, like, for example, the meaning of even the architecture that embodies the spirit of the ritual itself. And so the everyday life is very much merged with the idea of the ritual itself. This is what we are missing actually in our contemporary practice, I thought, because we tend to absorb some intellectual ideas and try to replace it into a kind of a stage or restage the daily life without, you know, like having the sense or like the experience of sensing the material itself. And I've been wondering, because in the contemporary art performance practice, like performance art in the 60s, like we have in the Westerns, like Herman Nietzsche, even now 100 years have voice, and then suddenly everything return into kind of the idea of ritual. And Herman Nietzsche did a kind of a ceremonial that looks like cult that replaced the idea of the devastating event during the Second World War. And but also now we have like several famous performance artists also from Europe, from the UK, like Ron Arthey. His performance is always also like involving the sense of a ceremonial ritual. And so, but this idea, what do you think, Buddha? Now I'm asking myself, since
no, I can understand
conversation with Ji-chan. What do you think that?
Am I allowed to say something about your work? Am I allowed to say something about your work?
Yeah.
Am I? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Melati, I find your work very, as an Indonesian artist who is not always, but when I've seen your work on that big, massive proscenium stage, how you're able to create a world in there, spatially speaking. But as an audience, when I'm out there, I still feel like I'm part of that whole space. I don't feel like you're creating a bubble of a ritual there and I'm over here watching it. In the two times that I've seen really large scale productions that you've done in Jakarta, I felt that, which I thought was a very interesting phenomena. And to me, it really has a lot to do with something about the spatiality of the piece itself, and also the feeling sense of the people who are doing it. Like, you know, dancing with those very classical, like Uarini, who is just always praying and dancing. Always praying and dancing. That's it. There's just no difference for her. It's never not praying and dancing for her. So, you know, standing next to her, it's like, oh, okay. It's just like that. It's not, there's no iffiness about it. It's just, that's what it is. But that means as a contemporary person, if we are pushed into the private realm, it means we'd have to practice a lot about how to open that into the public space. I think it's something in there. I don't know how you do that, actually. I would love to know how you do that. I would love to watch how you rehearse. Because there's something about that has to do with this. It's a private space that can move into a public sphere, something like that. Yeah.
You know, maybe we're talking about the last piece, the bigger piece that I made was the opera piece. It's like the opera that you watch at the in Jakarta, the biggest space in Jakarta, with 50 people, 30 on the stage and 20 in the music and playing the music live. It was a special case. It was a challenge for me also, like to replace the myth. We were talking about the myth, like the wayang, the Mahabharata stories into a contemporary context with the new music as the music of the opera. And so the only solution is actually really like to connect with our daily body, the sense and the atmosphere that bodies can bring or can be a bridge into the whole environment of the performance. And for beside my dance practice that I have just trained, the last 10 years, but the performance art practice that I have been doing since over 20 years actually is to let the border between me and the audience like more fluid. And I think the energy that is coming up between me and the audience, that is the accomplishment of the piece. And so probably in that idea, the ritual is the ritual aspect, that, for example, the space and the person who is doing the ritual and the person who is doing the ritual next to me is different purpose in mind. So this is maybe in that extraction I can tell a little bit about how I think, probably the way I transfer. But we are not talking about my practice here. I would like to open one more question.
That comes up.
That
comes later in the week.
So do you all, please, if you like to respond to Diane's presentations or idea or anything, maybe raise your hand. Or maybe River himself.
So looks like there's 10 things in the box. There's 10 things in the box.
Hello, Anne. Rina. Well, if okay, I was wondering, when I watch the video, it's very often I have a little bit big questions actually. Maybe this is a little bit not about ritual, but maybe also related to the ritual. Very often that my father danced and always very often representing female dancers and like upstaging female figures, like in the tradition, female figures mostly like like put in the certain area. So I've been debating with Suprapto Suryo Dharmo about how did he think about, for example, why women body symbolizing according to the for example the myth, like Dewi Sri like the goddess of rice, like Saraswati, even the goddess of knowledge, if I'm not wrong. And you know, like he invited the princess of the palace to dance with, and he invited the Pacarena. The dancer Pacarena is a female.
Actually, I can answer the question pretty easily for that one. Shall I?
Yes, please.
That was specifically because it was the parliament of the world's religions, which has an idea of that world religions could have a parliament, a kind of governmental quality. And it actually was started in America, but it was started by an Indian guru. I can't remember his name, pardon me, that's so horrible. In the turn of the century, that there could be an idea of there being an interreligious body that could have a parliamentary kind of quality, or a governmental, or a kind of leadership quality about it. So when Suprapto, or who's usually called Prapto, said, okay, if like that, then we'll create Trioni Saraswati. Why? As a balance for the male time, because now you're talking about duration. Because in his seeing, there was a kind of such a dominance of male in religious institutions and political institutions and world governance institutions, the United Nations and so forth. And that also we were just following on the footsteps of a period of time, speaking of duration, where there was a big conflict of world religions following the World Trade Center crash. So when we came in touch with the Parliament of World Religions, this is a long story, but it actually goes back to when we created Infinite Humanity at the World Trade Center. And that high priest, Padanda Arimbawa, also came to that. And he also prayed everywhere, all around, along with Ramamuji, who's a Christian, and a Balinese dancer and Islamic leader, Ibu Amanda from Jakarta, and many different people, including from Taiwan, from the Museum of World Religions. They came. So it was a whole confluence of things that were happening as kind of a duration of time moving forward. And then your father felt it was important to lift up the female presence in sense of leadership and like the big umbrella of the Kraton Solo and the moving of the female of Bali, and how the Makassar could give guidance with the fan like that. He really pushed them to really have presence and come forward on the stage. And the men should just move back. He didn't say it like that, just get out of the way. And that was the only way there was ever going to have peace between the world religions, would be if the women, the gender issue, you know, the last piece that your father created at Borobudur, he lifted up the Bisu, the fifth gender. He put it above everything, up high on a pole, way above even all those Tibetan lamas and the Buddhist lamas and the Chinese lamas and everybody. It was the fifth gender up on top of a gigantic pillar. Somebody could actually do a big, interesting essay if anybody wants to do a PhD about the reason why, because it was the Parliament of the World Religions. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because we are almost running out of time. It's always not enough. We need always time to get into the thing. But when we get into the thing, we have to finish. It's always like this. And we are now in Indonesia having a Ramadan season, which is a fasting time for the Muslim.
Back to this again.
And this is also many of my students, my friends, and many people in Indonesia. They start to eat to close the day of fasting today. And tomorrow, first I would like to say thank you to Diane, and thank you to
thank you. Really thank you.
Be part of this conversation, and I've been enjoying it. I hope you do the same. And tomorrow we will start again with another conversation, which is with Natasha Tonte, and at the same time, and I will be expecting that you are joining us, and she will present also a very interesting side of her practice that relates with rituals into digital world and put into a digital language. She's a young visual artist and performance artist from Indonesia. Thank you. I would like to give my space and time back to River for the closing. And thank you very much, Diane. Thank you very much. And
thank you very much. And really thank you for everybody who joined. And as they say here, pardon for any mistakes or anything that wasn't enough. I hope you can come and visit sometime soon or whatever. But really thank you, Melati. Really thank you.
Thank you.
Really thank you, River.
Thank you, amazing Diane and Melati, and all of you who have been staying with us until now. I think Melati already did a beautiful closing, so I think I got really nothing more to say, because I think it's very necessary for me to practice my back to Rachel for now. And have a nice day or have a nice evening. So if you haven't registered for tomorrow's section, you can still do. The registration will be closed 2 hours before the section for each day this week. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, and stay healthy and safe. And let's go back to Rachel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.